All right, so today we'll look at sentence completion. Sentence completion, it's one of the simplest topics in reading test, although some test takers find it a little bit difficult because they don't understand the arrangement of the answers um, on the passage. So before we get into the practical uh, side of today's training, let me establish that sentence completion questions are usually extracts from the main passage. So normally, an extraction will be made from the main passage, and perhaps the sentence completion question might cover about 4, 5, or 6 questions. So what they do is, from the main passage, they would simply extract what we call guided composition. Guided composition is more like having a composition with missing information. So what you need to do is, when you get that particular extract, try as much as possible to identify where the extract was made from in the passage, because they don't usually extract it from the entire passage. So they go to certain paragraphs and pick vital information, put them together, and leave some places blank, some keywords blank. So you would have to go and read the main passage to extract the missing answer. Now, the extracts that's usually being made don't come with the exact words used in a passage. So you should not expect that when the extract is made or done, that they would use the same words used in a passage. That never works. It doesn't work that way, right? But that doesn't mean that the entire extract will be paraphrased. No. Certain key words that will serve as clue to you to easily identify where the answers, where you should look out for your answer. You'll always see such clues there. So, but the main thing is there will be paraphrase, and the paraphrase is usually done for you. And that doesn't mean when you find your answer from the main passage that you should also paraphrase your answer. No, don't make the mistake of paraphrasing your answer. When you find your answer, use it that same way it is in a passage and fill in the missing spaces. But of course, you're not getting your answer to paste on the passage anymore. So you're picking out your answer and writing on your answer sheet. Now, at some point, like I've explained before, when you get that particular word which is supposed to be the right answer, it might sound off. It might sound grammatically incorrect, but that shouldn't be your problem. Just ensure that where the extract was made from, you have been able to identify it. And going through the extract, you've been able to establish that this is where the question is gotten from. So this word is the right answer. Write it that way. Examiners are aware. They understand that that's the right answer. So you want to really get the instruction, know how many words your answer should come. If it's going to be one word, it's going to be one word and a number. If it's going to be 2 words or 3 words. Identify that. Then the next step is locating where the extract was made from. Then the next thing you want to understand in sentence completion is that answers are always in the descending order of magnitude. So once you locate where the first answer is, the subsequent answers will keep coming down. It doesn't take you back and forth, right? It keeps coming down. The major target for you is get where the first answer is. Once you locate the first answer, the subsequent answers will always keep coming down. You might get your first answer in the first or second sentence of the first paragraph. The second answer might be in the third or fourth sentence of that same paragraph. If it's not there, you go to the second paragraph, check the first sentence, check the second sentence. If you don't see it, check the third sentence of the second paragraph. So it keeps coming down. That's the way the answers are always fixed for sentence completion, right? So let me take us through some practical experiences so you are able to practically understand how these things are fixed. Okay, so we have here on the board the question, a passage to be precise. Please, can you see the part? Can you see the
Yes.
my screen?
It's
All right.
visible now. Yes.
All right. Now on this screen, you must have seen or noticed that there are different paragraphs. So
Yes.
what you are expected to do is when you read these paragraphs, you are to take notice or note of certain keywords in each paragraph because they would constitute your answers. But before that, you want to quickly check the question. Right, so here we have the question. It says,
Investigation shows that children have fulfills of
okay, so what I want us, first it says no more than 3 words and or a number. So you have to take note of that. Your answer should not exceed 3 words. And the question covers 15 to 22. That's about eight
questions.
About 8 questions. So you need to understand how to get your answers, because this is one easy catch for you to scoop in 8 correct answers from. So you want to really understand how to get your answers for sentence completion so that whenever you see it in any of your reading test exercises, you are sure that none of these, no one of these answers would pass me by. So to begin, there are some clues. There are some subheadlines or subheadings that would help you to know which paragraph would get you the answers to the question. So the first subheading here is this guy that says, okay, just a moment. All right. So here is a subheading. This guy right here, it says investigations show that. So for questions 15 and 16, your answers will come under the paragraph that has something to do with investigation and their proofs. So this is how you can begin to work around your answers. So to get started, here is what you might want to do. We would go back to the passage. Okay, so here it says a fall from height is the most serious hazard associated with roof work. Preventing falls from roofs is a priority for WorkSafe New Zealand. Investigations by WorkSafe into falls that occur while working at height show that. Now, if you look at this point, you would see that there's something about investigation.
Yes.
So this is where your interest will begin to come in.
Yes.
So from here, anything you are looking for will definitely give you an answer. Then it also goes further to say that the height show. This is another clue when you look at the question. Now, if we read further, you would understand that it says investigation by WorkSafe into falls that occur while working at height show that more than 50% of falls are from under 3 meters. Yes. And most of these are from ladders and roofs. Now, let's go back to the question. Let's go back to the question and understand. So here it says over half. Over half is a keyword here, but in a paraphrased way. I'll show you how that paraphrase That paraphrasing
The
is played out.
50% in the
Aha,
passage.
that's exactly. It
Yes.
says over half. Now, in the passage, they paraphrased over half to 50%. So
50%,
from
yes.
that particular area, you know that over half or 50% of the falls are from less than. Your answer
3
is
meters.
3 meters as
3
indicated.
meters
Exactly. As indicated in the passage, as simple as that. So
passage.
you don't want to miss any of these answers. Here is your answer. It's
Mm.
indicated. So you just want to be sure that you've understood this guy. So it helps you to
Okay,
get your.
okay, like from here, the passage says 50% of us are from under,
Mhm.
but the question asks less than
Less
3
than
meters.
paraphrase.
I'm getting the trick. Yes, yes.
So paraphrase
Under
of
3 meters. But yes, if I look for less than as it was in the question, you miss it. But that under is paraphrased to less than.
exactly. So
Yeah.
that shows us that in reading tests, paraphrasing plays out massively. So
Yes.
you want to be super conscious of paraphrasing, else you might think and believe or even conclude that the answer is not in the passage. So that's the problem. So most people, when they look through the first paragraph, look through the second paragraph, and they don't find the words they are seeing in the question section, they assume that it's not there. And they keep wasting their time
Yeah.
reading other paragraphs, whereas the answer is in the first paragraph. So this is just one aspect of it. Then we shall go further to the second question. So the second question here says, okay, so when you go through the bullet points, the second bullet point here says most falls are from ladders and roof. That's the the last part of the sentence where our answer was gotten from. Then fall costs $24 million per year. We saw that in that same along that same line. Then lastly, it says the majority of falls occur on dash. The majority of falls occur on dash. So we need to quickly go to the passage and look for majority. Now, majority may not be used in the passage that you should take home. So majority can be from more or most. So wherever you see anything establishing more or most, and it has fall around it, that's where you should focus a lot more on. So let's look out for that as we go through this guide. So here it says, the cost of these falls is estimated to be $24 million a year. We saw that as one of the bullet points. To say nothing of the human cost that results from these falls. More injuries happen to residential building sites than any other workplace in the construction sector. What does this mean? This simply means the majority has been paraphrased to this guy right here. So this is where your answer lies. This is where the word majority was paraphrased. And then it's happened where residential building sites. Residential building sites. That is your answer. And here you have 3 words. And the instruction says write no more than 3 words. So you need to capture these 3 words for you to be able to get the correct answer. You need to capture these 3 words for your answer to be correct. So please, you really need to understand this. Our first answer, like I explained, that the answers are usually in the descending order of magnitude. So when you find your first answer, the second answer should come below it or immediately after it. So don't begin to look or search for your answers back and forth. It's not usually arranged that way when you are treating sentence completion, right? So it's usually in the descending order. Look at it this way. Our first answer was here, 3 meters. This is where it is. Now our second answer is here, residential building sites. Now this means the next answer will come downward. So you really want to be careful. You really want to understand these arrangements, and you need to get all of these things in the right order. This would help you to help you to know how the answers are fixed, right? So that's the way it works. Okay, so we shall continue. All right, so the third question, the third question is not coming from the second paragraph, if you can, or it might come from the second paragraph, but there are certain subheadings that you want to look out for. The first one here says hazard identification should be carried out. Hazard identification should be carried out. So the first thing here, the first bullet point here says before the work starts. Hazard identification should be carried out before the work starts. Second bullet point says when conditions such as the weather or worker numbers change. So hazard identification should also be carried out. Then look at it this way, controls. Controls should be where you are to focus a lot more on for answers to questions 17 and 18 as well as 19. So when you are reading the subsequent paragraphs, focus a lot more on the controls of what? The hazards that exist or occur during work. So let's look at the question. So when we are reading the passage, or when we go back to the passage, we know what we are looking for. Dash the hazard at the planning stage before the work begins, if possible. Dash the hazard at the planning stage before the work begins, if possible. Secondly, prevent a fall by using edge protection. For example, scaffolding or dash. Then the third answer under controls says, reduce the likelihood of injury. For instance, by using dash. All right, so we have taken note of what we should look out for. So let's go to the passage. Let's go to the passage. Right. Second paragraph says here, the second paragraph, let me show us where we are to focus a lot more on. So here is the second paragraph. Would that give us our answer? Let's find out. In order to prevent such injuries, a hazard assessment should be carried out for all work on roofs to assess potential dangers. It is essential that the hazards are identified by the work, before the work starts. It is essential that the hazards are identified before the work starts, and that the necessary equipment, appropriate precautions, and systems of work are provided and implemented. Hazard identification should be repeated periodically or when there is a change in conditions. For example, the weather or numbers of staff on site, right? Now, these are the assessments as indicated in that subheading. I believe we can still remember that. Look at it here. This subheading, don't forget this. Hazard identification should be carried out before the work starts when conditions change. So that paragraph does not give us any answer. It's still in line with the subheading under this section. So it's not what we should focus on. And we shouldn't be carried away, or we shouldn't fall for distractor. There is a distractor there identified. So someone might quickly say, identify the hazard at the planning stage before the work begins, if possible. No, it doesn't work that way. Because when you look at that paragraph, it says, don't fall for this guy. Because someone might be thinking, I saw the answer somewhere. If you fall for this guy, you are picking the wrong answer. Here, the word here says identified. It's in the past. So it cannot work for that particular area, right? You shouldn't go for it. The sentence is more like a present or habitual tense. So it should be in the present form and not in the past tense, because it will not align with that particular sentence in the passage at the question section, right? So you have to be careful. Don't fall for distractors. That's one big mistake a lot of us make. Look at the distractor here. Identified the hazard at the planning stage before the work begins, if possible. So anyone who gets carried away by that may easily, miss it, right? So let's go to where the right answer is. I believe it should be in the third paragraph. Okay, so let's look at the third paragraph. This is it right here. It says, the first thing to be considered is whether it is possible to eliminate this hazard completely so that workers are not exposed to the danger of falling. The first thing to be considered is whether it is possible to eliminate this hazard completely so that workers are not exposed to the danger of falling. All right, so let's look at this key information here. Whether it is possible to eliminate this hazard completely. Whether it is possible to eliminate this hazard completely. Now, going back to the question. Oops. Right, so going back to the question, it says, dash the hazard at the planning stage before the work begins, if possible. The passage says possibly, whether, if, possibly, possible, right? So the right word to be chosen or picked as your right answer is eliminate. So if you bring that here, it says eliminate the hazard at the planning stage before the work begins, if possible. Eliminate, right? So that shows you that that's where your answer is. That's where your answer is. So please be very careful. Look at it right here. Be very careful. Don't fall for distractors. They are everywhere. They are everywhere when you are reading, when you're taking on your reading test, they're everywhere. Be careful not to fall for it. So it says eliminate hazards. And here it says whether it is possible. That's where the paraphrasing will always come in.
This one is completely confusing. Honestly, it twisted the whole question.
Yes.
You must be an expert to catch up with this.
So if you make the mistake of choosing identified, the sentence will be incorrect grammatically. This is where a lot of people would go for identified, because it says it is essential that the hazards are identified before the work starts. And when you go to the question, when you go back to the question, it clearly states that Oops.
Dash hazard. Dash the hazard
Yes.
before the work starts.
Dash the hazard at the planning stage before the
Planning
work begins,
stage
if
before the
possible.
work begins,
So
if possible.
if you're not careful and you go for identified, the sentence will not sound correct. And of course,
Suppose I use identify the hazard.
that means you have
Putting
paraphrased what is written in the passage. You're not supposed to paraphrase, you're supposed to do copy
this
and
is
paste.
serious.
The way it's used in a passage is the way you have
In
to
the
copy it
passage.
and write as your answer. So
Wow.
it won't fly that way. So the best answer for you is eliminate. So eliminate this hazard completely. And then if possible, here is possible, and here is if in paraphrased way. So please, let's always try to interpret these guys and make the best choices. Okay, so let's go to the next question. It says, prevent a fall by using edge protection. For instance, scaffolding or dash. Prevent a fall by using edge protection, for instance, scaffolding or dash. So we are going back to that passage to look for where scaffolding was mentioned. So back to the same paragraph where we got our third answer, which is right here. We should proceed with the reading to get our next answer. So it says, if the possibility of a fall cannot be eliminated, see the second mention of the right answer. Some form of edge protection should be used to prevent workers from falling. It may be possible to use the existing scaffolding as edge protection. If this is not practicable, then temporary work platform should be used. So there are two things here that are to be used. The first is, it's either you use the scaffolding edge or you make use of the temporary work platforms. Right, so when you find these guys, please be careful because the question already has identified the first thing to be used. Scaffolding as edge, that's scaffolding, or dash. So you want to look out for the second one. So the second one here is a temporary work platform. So please, sentence completion is one of the easiest topics in reading test that you should treat. And be sure to get your answers all correct. So look at it here. Prevent a fall by using edge protection, such as scaffolding. Remember, scaffolding in the passage says scaffolding as edge, or the temporary work platforms, right? So maybe the temporary work platforms might be the net that people apply at professional sites. There are nets that they tie so that when people fall, they would land on the net and the net bounces them up and then they stabilize and they are being rescued. Alternatively, some put clothing material somewhere that the people, when they fall, they land there, they don't go to crash. Some other people put foams on the floor so that no matter how the worker falls, the foam on the floor would prevent certain injuries to the person. So that's one of the temporary building work platforms. So that's where your answer is. Then the third one, it says reduce the likelihood of injury by using dash. Reduce the likelihood of injuries by using dash. So let's see what it is. Now, we still have our third paragraph. So let's see if the fourth answer will still come from it. So we have gotten the temporary work platforms. So we'll continue reading from there. In cases where such protection is not possible, then steps should be taken to minimize the likelihood of any harm resulting. Minimize, reduce, false. This paraphrases you're experiencing in reading. This means considering the use of safety nets and other similar systems to make it less likely that injury will be caused if a fall occurs. Safety nets. This is your answer. Safety nets. So here is your right answer, right? So safety nets is your answer. Let's go to the next quickly. Let's go to the next question. It says, that's number 20, 21, and 22. We are focusing on the paragraph that has ladders, that talks about ladders. So first bullet point, which is where we're looking for, these should only be used for dash, which does not take a long time. These should only be used for dash, which does not take a long time. Then training should be provided in their dash and use. Training should be provided in their dash and use. Regular dash of ladders is required. So let's quickly go to the paragraphs, or pardon me, the paragraph that talks about ladders. Here we go. So this is the paragraph. So it says ladders should only be employed for short duration maintenance work, such as touching up paint. Ladders should only be employed for short duration maintenance work, such as touching up paint. People using ladders should be trained.
Sorry, Mr. Ben, I was knocked off. I think network is so unstable. I was knocked off when we're still talking about the scaffolding. So I couldn't get whatever you have discussed there.
All right.
From that scaffolding, the network knocked me off. I just rejoined now.
Okay, all right. I'll take you through that again. But let's just get done with this last paragraph.
Okay.
Now we are treating the last three questions. It says, from this paragraph, we have ladders should only be employed for short duration maintenance work, such as touching up paint. People using ladders should be trained and instructed in the selection and safe use of ladders. There should be inspection of all ladders on a regular basis to ensure they are safe to use. So I will take us back to the question. So right, these should only be used for dash, which does not take a long time. These should only be used for dash, which does not take a long time. So what exactly is being referred to? Ladders. It says ladders should only be employed for short duration. That is, it doesn't take a long time. So we're looking at maintenance work, because short duration has been established in the question. Look at it here, which does not take a long time. That's the short duration that has been established. So any other thing we are looking for should be another answer that excludes short duration. So maintenance work is our best answer, right? That's for question number 20. So this is where our answer is for question number 20. Question number 21, people using ladders should be trained and instructed by the selection and safe use of ladders. So selection is the best answer for us. Selection is the best answer for us. Then lastly, there should be inspection of all ladders on a regular basis to ensure they are safe to use. So inspection is the best answer for question 22. So I will take us back to the questions. Maintenance work for 20, selection for 21, inspection for 22. So let's see if we made the best choices of answers. So here we have, these should only be used for maintenance work, which does not take a long time. Then number 21, training should be provided in their dash and use. So we chose in their what? So here we said in their selection. Okay, in their yep, that's correct. That's correct. Training should be provided in their selection. So they should be trained on how to make selections of ladders before they use them. Then regular inspection of ladders is required, right? So these are the major things you really need to work on. These are major things. These are steps you want to take. These are ways to get your answers when you're treating your sentence completion. Just take us through the arrangement like I explained.